The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Bohnanza and Dahlia. Doug, give us the stats.
Or Bohnanza Dahlias. Published in 2023 by Amigo. The designer is Uwe Rosenberg, and the art is by Beth Sobel. It is for 3 to 5 players. It plays in about 45 minutes. Ages 10 plus on the box. I think 8 plus. Board Game Geek goes crazy with 6 plus. I think that is a stretch.
I do too.
But this is going to be a family game, and it's time to plant some flowers and beat your fellow gardeners to the market to score the most cash. In Bohnanza Dahlias, players collect, trade, plant, and harvest beautiful dahlia flowers to be the most profitable florist by the end of the game. Players start the game with a random hand of 5 flower cards. The tricky part is that players can never rearrange or reorder the cards in their hand. On their turn, a player must plant the first flower in their hand into one of the fields before them. You may also plant the next card in your hand if you'd like. If you need to plant a flower type that isn't already in one of your fields, you'll need to harvest a set of your existing flowers first to make room for the new flower. After the mandatory planting, you reveal 2 cards from the draw deck. The turned over cards belong to you. You can plant them in your fields or use them to trade with other players. Trading with the other players gets unwanted cards out of your hand and can increase the value of your fields. But be careful, because cards that you don't trade must be planted at the end of your turn, even if you don't want to. For the final phase of your turn, you'll draw 3 cards, one after another, and add them to the back of your hand. You can harvest flowers from your fields at any point during the game. You'll remove the cards from your field and consult the market price on the front of the card based on the number of flower cards that you harvest. For example, you earn 2 cards if you harvest 5 Bumble Rumbles. You're going to flip 2 of those flower cards over to the coin side, which is the reverse side of the card, and then stack them by your field and then discard the rest. When the draw pile runs out, reshuffle the discard and continue playing. The game ends when the draw pile runs out for the 3rd time. At that point, players harvest any flowers in their fields and count the number of coins they have earned throughout the game. The player with the most cards wins. So that is how you play Bohnanza Dahlias. There's going to be some comparisons here to the original game of Bohnanza. And I'm going to start with 2 things that I like. I used to have the original Bohnanza in my collection. It is no longer in my collection.
Sad day.
But this game is the one that replaced it. And I like it because it's easier to get set up and playing compared to the original Bohnanza. So in this game, it's for 3 to 5 players. You're using all the cards in the deck, no matter how many players you have playing. In the original Bohnanza, you had to take certain bean cards out depending on player count.
It's not that big of a deal. I love how people act like it's such a chore and labor and prevents them from getting it to the table.
I'm not saying it prevents me from getting it to the table. However, if you play with a full set of players and then go back and all those cards are shuffled and you have to go back and find the cocoa beans, it takes longer to get the game set up. Is this a earth-shattering amount of time? No, but I like not having to deal with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really like about this is that in the original Bohnanza, you can purchase more fields.
3rd field. It's a race to get it. Who's going to get there first?
And I like that this game does not have that. I like that it keeps the game moving and it forces you to make harder decisions. Is that, when you play in the original game, you get that 3rd field. It's like, all right, now I have a little bit more flexibility and I don't get put into those positions where it's like I have to harvest the field early. This one, because it takes out that extra rule, I don't have to explain it to anybody, and you just play, and it forces you to deal and makes you a little bit more anxious to trade and willing to trade, and I like that about this version.
You sending it back to me?
I'm sending it back to you.
Thank you. As longtime listeners will know, I am a fan of Bohnanza. The original Bohnanza Uwe Rosenberg with those wonderful coffee beans, with all the different flavors of beans. Our original copy from very early in our marriage, it has a sticker on it with our last name because my wife takes it into the schoolhouse so much. Bohnanza Dahlia is one that I ran to Gen Con when it opened the first day that we got there to get. Went to my wallet and was like, I need this game. And Corey and Alex, our friends over at Amigo, I mean, I could not wait to get a hold of this game. And I love it. Absolutely love it. I think Doug made a really good point. I personally like the ability to buy the third field. However, you want to play the game with kids and maybe with folks who aren't playing 500 hours of board games a year, Bohnanza Dahlia is more approachable because it takes that decision out. You are more incentivized to trade based on what's in your hand and not on trying to just, I'm trying to use very family-friendly language here on our podcast, which is usually not a challenge, but be a jerkhead to others. Like, I feel like the trading component in Dahlia is friendlier than the cutthroat nasty of the original. There's a lot to like here, and the art, the gameplay, the ease of getting it to the table, all of those things that you mentioned. Our games don't tend to last 45 minutes like it says on the box. That's one thing I wanted to ask you in your family. To me, it tends to play in more of a 20 to 30 minute time span, but maybe that's just because we know the rules and we have it down.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on how choosy people are with trading and making deals and things like that. I do appreciate that this game has what I would call mutually beneficial trading, unlike a lot of other trading games that come out. And I think about even a great game like Catan that has trading, and you get that person every round that's like, I got some sheep. Anybody can give me a rock for some sheep? I have all this sheep. This one, a stone, whatever, mountain. This one, because you only have the two fields, you are really incentivized to clear out your hand when you can. So if I've got a card that's clogging up that I'm going to have to plant next turn, yeah, I know that that's going to help Michael by giving it to him, but I'm going to do whatever I can to try and make a deal so I can clear it out of my hands so I don't have to get rid of my Glorias sooner than I wanted to.
Yeah,
I could be looking at a hand of two Glorias and then a pumpkin seed and then two Glorias right after it. And I'm like, I got to get rid of this pumpkin so I can get access to those Glorias and harvest a bigger payday. So I like that it's beneficial for everybody. There is times, though, when your hand works out great and you don't have to trade. And so it is something to be aware of with younger players. I think this is going to be this is why I put it at the starting point of 8, and it's going to be touchy depending on the type of players that you have in your house, right? You have some kids that are going to laugh and go, I can't believe I have to get rid of this and plant this flower I don't want. You have other kids that's going to turn into tears. Sometimes you will get stuck with a flower on that draw that nobody wants or they're not going to take, and you're going to have to harvest a field that you don't want to. So, be aware of that depending on how your kids react to that type of situation. But for me, it's a fun family game that gets that has the right amount of bite. So there is a little bit of pain in this game. However, everybody's talking. Yeah. Everybody's talking the entire game and interacting with one another. And it's like, you cannot play this game and be silent.
Yeah, it's not a heads down Uwe game. This is a high interaction game. And what I wanted to jump in on, but I didn't want to interrupt you there, that interaction of tears and frustration, it's only happened in our house in the full 5-player game. Because once you get into 4 or 5 players, then you're limited to 2 fields. When you're playing the game at 3 players, that's where you have the 3 fields. And
I believe you have that reversed.
For 3 players, you have the 3 fields. 4 players, you have the 2 fields. Yeah.
You said 3 when you have 5 players, I thought.
Oh, I don't know. Well, you'll have to play it back in the editing. I thought I had it right. In my brain, I had it right. But where I was going is the rule book is really good, folks. Really good. And I think Amigo got a lot of things right in the production, how the game sits on the shelf, how easy it is to just throw in a bag and take with you. This is a game that has often lived in my quiver, where I've got a bunch of other card games. And the play mats can kind of sit right across there as well. But that issue that Doug talked about, maybe it's not an issue in every house. This is a game where you know your kids, you know your play group the best. If you have that direct interaction where somebody's going to get upset if someone does not agree with them for a trade, or, oh, Dad, you traded with them, but you wouldn't trade with me. Rah! I mean, you got to just be prepared heading into the game. It is that type of game where I think the more trades you make, the better off it's going to be. That's always been my Bonanza approach. The more I trade, the better it's going to be for me and for me. I'm trading now. I'm trading in the future. I'm always trading. But, go ahead.
I think it works out pretty well that almost once per game, everybody is going to get stuck planting a card that they don't want to plant.
Yes.
Right? So it's not like, oh, you're going to play the whole game and it's only going to be one kid that gets stuck with that. It's like it's going to happen 1 or 2 times every game to everybody, where they can't make a trade, can't make a deal, and they've got to harvest something earlier than they wanted to.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is about this version compared to the first version, but the initial Bonanza with the angry bean on the cover, that one could have a runaway leader. And the downside of that game is we clearly have another 30 minutes to go, and you are clearly winning. Yes, you got the early lead. Yes, we know that you've got the monopoly on the wax and the coffee, and you're building your lead every round that goes by. But in preparing for this show, the plays in our house have been very, very close. My wife tends to win in Bohnanza Dahlia, and I'm okay with that because this is one that when it gets to the table, people are having fun, but we don't have the 30, 17, 14 games. This is more of a 21, 19, 14, 14, or a 17, 16, 14, 14 game. So whatever they did in the development of it, I'm not going to say that was addressed, but in our game plays, it's close. And I think that's part of the fun of it as well.
All right, what kind of skills you got in this one, Michael?
Well, I got just straight up observation. Well, you have to know what other people need and what other people are doing in that negotiating, so you know when to hold them, you know when to fold them, and you know when to just walk away, right? And if you haven't heard that before, maybe we should trademark that in the Game Schooler podcast. Don't know if it's available.
It seems catchy.
But that skill of observation is here, and what I really like about it is it's one that young gamers catch onto quickly. First time a trade goes around and it does or doesn't happen and people see how that's carried out, suddenly they know, like, ooh, you can give me a card if I ask for it? Interesting. And also just being able to see the order of the cards that are coming up, because the order of the cards in your hand are so critical. You have to be paying attention.
Yeah. So, just to point out, the big sacrifice I guess you're making between this and the original Bonanza is the player count, right? The original goes from 2 to 7 players. This one is 3 to 5. So you are reducing your play count down. To me, I think the changes to do that make it worthwhile. The other skills I've got is group discussion. People are going to be talking while this game is going on. And I love that about this game. Very often, you would associate the level of communication in this game to something that you would find in a party game, but it's wrapped up into a game that's a little bit more strategic and thinky. There's also the risk management of how close you're going to ride that rail of can I get these beans down? Do I hold off? Do I harvest them now, or maybe I have a chance to add a couple more flowers there before I've got to get rid of them and things like that. And that can be risky, and it's going to lead to
risk management can be risky, Doug. I concur.
Yeah. And but it can lead to some of those moments that we talked about where I don't want to be planting that. And so I think it's a great game to teach resilience. Like, all right,
that's good.
Harvest that field and let's move on. You know, now you're building the pumpkins. Now you're building, whatever seed that you've planted. Now you're in that flower game. Let's start building that and stop worrying about the one that you just had to give up on.
Yeah, I had concentration, risk management, and resource management as being grouped together as a category of skills where I really need to be focusing on how I'm going to manage the fields and when I want to get that payout. So that's that sense of resource management with the slight risk management as well. And especially as the game goes on, I think I know, like, you have 4 cards in your hand and I know 3 of them. So I'm fairly certain you're not going to make a trade. And then the person sitting to my left, they have 6 cards in their hand and I know 4 or 5 of them. So look, if I don't pick up this card, I what am I going to do here? And I love that, that even though I don't actually know, but I think I know. I think I know what you have in your hand, and so I like how that resource management evolves in this game as well. I'm also trying to manage your hand as well as my hand so that I can optimize what's in my field. And seeing kids play that out as well, my 9-year-old and 12-year-old might not go through that same sort of calculation, but definitely that is how my 16-year-old is playing the game, looking across a table, trying to shake down what other people have in their hand so that they can make a decision. So
yeah, it's not too often, but I'm going to say that this is just a great family game, and one I think that we think that you should try if you get the chance. That's our game of the week, Bohnanza Dahlias from Amigo.